In 1954, something exploded in the constellation Auriga. Nobody was watching closely enough to catch it properly. The photographic plates from that era recorded a brightening at a specific point in the sky, a flare of light at coordinates that at the time meant nothing to anyone. No follow-up observations were made, no paper was written. The brightening was logged, filed, and forgotten in an archive that nobody would open again for 60 years. Then, in September 2014, a supernova was detected at the same coordinates. A star had exploded, violently, brilliantly, exactly as dying stars are supposed to explode. Astronomers cataloged it, designated it IPTF-14HLS, and began the standard process of monitoring its decline. Supernovae are well understood. They explode, they brighten over days or weeks, they fade over months. The physics is settled. The timeline is predictable. IPTF-14HLS did not fade. It brightened 5 times over 2 years. Each brightening released energy equivalent to a full supernova. A star cannot do this, not according to any model we had before 2014. The explosion that produces a supernova destroys the star. There is nothing left to explode again. The mechanism is consumed by the event itself. And yet, the team that discovered the anomaly was led by Ayer Arkavi at the University of California, Santa Barbara, working with data from the Intermediate Palomar Transient Factory, a sky survey specifically designed to catch transient events, things that change in brightness over days or weeks. IPTF-14HLS was flagged because it was not behaving like a normal supernova. The automated system noticed the anomaly. The humans looked closer. What they found when they examined the light curve, the record of the star's brightness over time, was something that had no precedent in the observed history of stellar explosions. The brightness oscillated. Multiple peaks separated by weeks to months, each peak luminous enough to qualify as an independent supernova event if observed in isolation. The spectrum of the explosion looked like a normal Type 2P supernova, a hydrogen-rich explosion from a massive star, exactly the kind that forms when a red supergiant reaches the end of its life. The spectral lines were right. The velocities of the ejected material were right. Everything about the explosion looked normal, except for the fact that it kept happening. When the team that discovered the anomaly searched the historical archives and found the 1954 brightening at the same location, the problem became structurally different from anything they had encountered before. A Type 2 supernova destroys its progenitor star. There is nothing left after the explosion, only a neutron star or black hole at the center and an expanding cloud of debris called a supernova remnant. If the 1954 event was a genuine supernova, the star should have been gone. There should have been nothing left at that location to produce the 2014 explosion. But something produced it. Something was there. The leading hypothesis is one of the most extreme scenarios in all of stellar physics, a process called a pulsational pair instability supernova. It requires a star of almost unimaginable mass. Stars above roughly 130 times the mass of our Sun, possibly higher, the exact threshold is uncertain, can develop an instability in their cores driven by the creation of electron-positron pairs. At the extreme temperatures and densities in the cores of these hypermassive stars, photons spontaneously convert into pairs of electrons and their antimatter counterparts, positrons. This conversion reduces the radiation pressure holding the star up, triggering a partial collapse.
But unlike a normal core collapse supernova, the collapse in a pulsational pair instability event does not proceed all the way to a neutron star or black hole. The partial collapse compresses and heats the core enough to trigger explosive nuclear burning, an enormous thermonuclear pulse that blasts through the outer layers of the star, ejecting mass at high velocity and causing a massive brightening. Then the explosion ends. The star survives, damaged, stripped of some of its outer layers, but structurally intact. And after years or decades, the instability returns. Another pair creation episode, another partial collapse, another thermonuclear pulse, another explosion. This cycle repeats until the star has expelled enough mass to stabilize, or until the core finally collapses completely in a terminal explosion that leaves nothing behind. It is, in theory, a mechanism that allows a star to explode multiple times. In theory. But here is the problem. The pulsational pair instability model predicts that the intervals between explosion pulses should be years to decades, not 60 years. The 1954 event and the 2014 events are separated by 6 decades, which pushes the boundaries of what standard pair instability models can comfortably produce. The energy released in each brightening of IPTF-14HLS was also higher than most models predict for this mechanism. More troublingly, the spectra from IPTF-14HLS showed hydrogen throughout its entire 2-year active period, hydrogen moving at speeds consistent with material ejected from the star's outer layers. Pair instability supernovae models typically predict that a star massive enough to undergo this process should have shed most of its hydrogen envelope long before the explosions begin, through stellar winds and mass loss over its lifetime. Hydrogen-rich pair instability supernovae are theoretically possible, but require very specific conditions. Every version of the model that fits one aspect of IPTF-14HLS struggles with another. Multiple groups have attempted to simulate IPTF-14HLS using different stellar evolution models, different assumptions about the progenitor star's mass and composition, different treatments of the pair instability mechanism. None of them fully reproduce the observed light curve. None of them match the combination of the 1954 precursor event, the 5 brightenings, the hydrogen-rich spectra, and the total energy released. IPTF-14HLS is not unexplained in the sense of having no candidate mechanism. It is unexplained in the deeper sense. The candidate mechanisms exist, but none of them fit cleanly. The data requires assumptions that push every model to its limits, and sometimes beyond them. And this is where the story stops being about one star and starts being about what one star reveals. For decades, astronomers believed that stars above a certain mass limit, roughly 200 to 250 solar masses, could not exist in the present universe. The physics of stellar formation seemed to cap stellar mass at roughly that level. Stars that massive would be so luminous that their own radiation pressure would blow them apart before they could fully form. But IPTF-14HLS, to match the observed behavior under pair instability models, may have required a progenitor star of at least 200 solar masses, possibly more. A star at or beyond the theoretical upper limit of what we believed could exist.
If that is correct, it means there are stars in the universe, possibly common stars in the early universe when conditions were different, possibly rare stars that occasionally form even today that are massive enough to generate a completely different mode of death. Not the clean, one-time core collapse of a normal supernova, a prolonged, pulsating, multi-stage explosion that can span decades or centuries, a star that dies in installments. We had no confirmed observations of this process before 2014. We had the theory, we had the models, we had the predictions. And then IPTF-14HLS appeared and was almost the right thing, but not quite. Close enough to suggest the theory is on the right track, different enough to suggest the theory is incomplete in ways we have not yet identified. There is another possibility. One that the original discovery team mentioned carefully, almost reluctantly, because it has no theoretical framework at all. What if IPTF-14HLS is something entirely new? Not a variant of pair instability, not an extreme version of a known mechanism, something that does not have a name yet because nothing like it has been observed before and no theoretical framework predicted it. The history of astronomy is full of objects that were discovered before they were understood. Pulsars were discovered in 1967 and initially so inexplicable that the discovery team briefly considered, half seriously, that they might be signals from an alien civilization. Fast radio bursts, millisecond pulses of radio energy from cosmological distances, were discovered in 2007 and remained completely unexplained for years, with no consensus on their mechanism for nearly a decade. Gamma-ray bursts were detected in the 1960s by satellites designed to monitor nuclear tests, and their cosmological origin was not confirmed until 1997. In each case, the object preceded the explanation. The universe produced the phenomenon. The understanding came later, sometimes much later. IPTF-14 HLS may be in that category. An observation in search of a theory, a data point that the current framework of stellar physics cannot fully absorb, waiting for the framework to be rebuilt around it. Or waiting for the next observation that provides the missing piece. Since the original paper was published in 2017, IPTF-14 HLS has faded from active monitoring. The star, or whatever remains of it, has dimmed below the threshold of easy detection. Whether it has finally died or whether it is currently in a quiet phase between explosions, we do not know. The archives will be watched. If something brightens again at those coordinates, if IPTF-14 HLS produces another pulse, another eruption, another inexplicable release of energy at a location where a star has now been observed exploding across 7 decades, it will be detected. The sky surveys that found it in 2014 are still running. Better ones have come online since. The coordinates are known. If it happens again, we will see it. And if it does not happen again, if IPTF-14 HLS has finally ended, then what remains is the record, a light curve unlike any other in the observed history of the universe, a 1954 photographic plate in an archive, a sequence of brightenings that no single model fully explains, a star that by all rights should have died in 1954 and instead waited 60 years, then died again, repeatedly over 2 years, in a way that the combined knowledge of modern astrophysics cannot completely account for. We catalog the universe by what we understand. We build models, confirm predictions, classify objects into categories that reflect the physics we know, and most of the time, the universe cooperates. Most supernovae fade on schedule. Most stars die in the ways their masses predict. Most of the sky behaves according to equations written by people who never observed the specific thing those equations describe. And then, something like IPTF-14 HLS appears. A star in the wrong archive, an explosion that happened before it happened, a light curve that looks almost familiar and then does something that no familiar thing can do. It does not disprove what we know. It does not collapse the framework. It sits at the edge of the framework, slightly outside it, in the gap between what the equations predict and what the sky actually does. That gap is not a failure of science. It is where science lives, in the distance between the model and the measurement, between what we built to explain the universe and what the universe decided to do instead. IPTF-14 HLS exploded in 1954. It exploded again in 2014. It may be exploding right now, at coordinates we know, in a frequency our telescopes can detect, broadcasting its impossibility across 250 million light-years of space. And somewhere in an office, in a database, in an automated alert system scanning the sky for things that change, someone might be about to see it happen again.